This Week in Gaming with Naomi Kyle.
Hello, friendos. I'm Naomi Kyle, and welcome back to This Week in Gaming. This week, we're catching up on Watch Dogs movie news, the latest on the new Elden Ring DLC. A Nintendo executive talks about game development cycles, what it's like to make a video game, and GTA 5 had a DLC? We've got all of this week's gaming news, so let's get started. After its announcement 10 years ago, the Watch Dogs movie has finally begun filming. Watch Dogs, Ubisoft's popular hacking adventure franchise, has been trapped in the seventh circle of pre-production hell for some time, leading many to think that it was curtains for the cybernetic story. The Watch Dogs movie has no doubt been given the green light to begin filming thanks to the success of video game movies and TV shows over the last few years. We have since learned that the names of two of the actors who will be portraying characters in this original Watch Dogs story, Tom Blythe of Hunger Games fame and Sophie Wilde from Talk to Me, will star in the film whenever it comes out at some point in the future. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time took a team of 50 people and 2.5 years to finish developing the game. Twilight Princess took 3 years, and Breath of the Wild took over 300 people and 5 years to develop. These games are some of the best action-adventure experiences of all time, so why did each game take longer to develop than the last? And what can be done to shorten the development time of games in the current era? At an annual shareholders meeting, Nintendo executives were asked just that. Nintendo executive Shinya Takahashi responded with, "As hardware advances, it is inevitable that software development takes longer. But I believe we are succeeding in our efforts to shorten development cycles by steadily improving the development environment following the release of the hardware. Whether titles take a long time or a short time to develop, we want to make games that are fun." So simply put, games are just getting bigger. What was once a 30 to 40 hour experience has now ballooned into a 100 or sometimes even a 200 hour experience. Despite this, Nintendo remains steadfast in their approach to making games that are fun first and foremost. So if it means we have to wait another 5 years to get the best version of Metroid Prime 4, so be it. 2K Games announced that they had established a new studio, Cloud Chamber, specifically tasked with producing games for the BioShock franchise. That announcement was nearly 5 years ago. And since then, Cloud Chamber has been dead quiet until recently. 30 job offers with Cloud Chamber have been listed on LinkedIn, with roles ranging from animators to senior writers. These listings seem to confirm a rumor from back in 2022 that the next mainline BioShock game has been scrapped and that the team has been sent back to the drawing board. With this many career listings all at once, it doesn't seem like we'll be getting a new entry in the BioShock series anytime soon, maybe not even until the next generation. Let's hope they make the most of their time, creating an experience worthy of the BioShock name. In what is surely to be the most bizarre news in gaming this week, a man in England was arrested for brandishing a replica of Zelda's Master Sword. Okay, so to say that he was brandishing a weapon is a bit harsh. The sword in question was no bigger than 6 inches, which unfortunately for our hero of time, Wannabe, is 3 inches longer than the UK law allows for knives of any sort. So how did this all unfold? Well, this zany Zelda misadventure began when our hero, 48-year-old Anthony Bray, was spotted by CCTV walking down the street with something looking like a weapon in his hands. He approached officers with the letter-sized Master Sword visible, in which officers feared he might attack, and they arrested Bray. Bray claims that he had no intention of harming the officers and that the Master Sword is just something he likes to fidget with. Sergeant Spellman of Warwickshire Police commented saying, "It is possible to find fidget toys that aren't 6-inch blades. It is possible not to walk down the street holding them in front of you. With a bit more self-awareness, Bray could have avoided contact with us completely." And I have to agree. Last week I reported that the Elden Ring DLC Shadow of the Erdtree had been patched to make the DLC less difficult. Well, since then, developer From Software has issued another patch, only this time to level the playing field in favor of the enemies in the DLC. Players in the Souls community discovered some very overpowered weapons that From Software has declared are in dire need of balancing. These weapons include all weapons in the Smith script line, the Golem Fist, and the Thrusting Shield, which has been found to consume less stamina when attacking from a blocking animation than it would attacking normally. Patch 1.12.3, as it is officially known, is very extensive, and I unfortunately don't have the time to go over all the patch fixes in this segment. But if you're curious for more information and patch notes, head over to the publisher's website, BandaiNamcoENT.com. Grand Theft Auto 5 is one of the greatest success stories in gaming. At the time of this recording, GTA 5 has sold over 200 million copies and continues to be one of the most played games, selling about 5 million more copies every 3 months. GTA 5 is primarily played for its online service, GTA Online, where players can conduct co-op missions or simply take part in some good old-fashioned player versus player chaos. But did you know that before GTA Online, developer Rockstar was working on a main story DLC? The story for the DLC isn't entirely known, but Stephen Ogg, who played Trevor, one of the game's 3 anti-heroes, Stephen has said that the DLC would have involved Trevor going undercover working for the feds. He said, quote, "We did shoot some of that stuff with James Bond Trevor, where he's still kind of a bleep up, but he's doing his best." That sounds amazing, right? So what happened? Why didn't the DLC ever get released? A YouTuber who goes by the handle San in Play asked the same question when they interviewed former camera artist for Rockstar, Joe Rubino. Joe had said this: "It was really, really good. But when GTA Online came out, it was so much of a cash cow, and people were loving it so much that it was hard to make an argument that a standalone DLC would outcompete that. I think looking back now, you could probably do both, but that was a business decision they made. And I think they made the right decision entirely." Since its launch last week, Nexon's free-to-play looter shooter, The First Descendant, has been through the ringer. The First Descendant has had a big launch, sure, but players have described the game as being no less than microtransaction hell, and the PS5 version of the game is subject to dramatic drops in frame rate, and sometimes even resulting in the game crashing. What else could possibly go wrong? Well, as it turns out, a lot. Lately, players have reported that the game's chat feature is toxic, rife with inappropriate comments and even at times hack advertisements. Players have gone as far as calling the chat a cesspool, making it difficult to find others to group up with in-game. This latest issue to plague The First Descendant has reached the ears of the game's developer Nexon, who have in response issued an update communicating to players that they have launched an investigation, though they haven't said how they plan to fix it. Toxic chat rooms have hounded online gaming since the advent of Xbox Live, and maybe even earlier than that. But just because you love a game, that doesn't mean that you have to subject yourself to a nasty chat room. For those looking for an alternative, I encourage you to give the Discord app a try. The beauty of Discord is that if you find a server for a game and it ends up being toxic, you can simply leave and find one that is more suitable to your sensibilities. Now let's go over the video games releasing this week.
Games out this week.
July 9th, Arc of Chiron and Once Human releases exclusively on PC. The basketball update Alley Oops onto Nintendo Switch Sports, which is of course a Nintendo Switch exclusive. On July 11th, Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown Deluxe Edition is ported from consoles and flies over to PC. Angerfoot kicks the door in on PC. Alaskan Road Truckers Highway Edition changes gears from PC and sets its course for PS5 and Xbox Series X and S. Coming to Game Pass this week, Cricket 24 and The Case of the Golden Idol drops on July 9th. Then Neon White and Tachia drop on Game Pass July 11th. The Epic Games Store will have Floppy Nights available to download for free from July 11th to July 18th. Amazon Prime subscribers will be able to download Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, Samurai Bringer, Alex Kidd in Miracle World DX, and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 on July 11th. Nintendo Switch Online is offering a 1-week free trial of Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. The game will be available starting July 8th until July 14th.
Quest complete.
It's now time to chat with our guest this week, Jesse Cox, who joins us to chat about what it's like making a video game and if games should take longer to develop.
Select game mode. Multiplayer.
Jesse Cox, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about your game. You are producing currently a game. You've been producing this for a while. I want you to tell me all about it. What is this video game that you have worked on? And then we're also going to get into, what development is like, something we haven't really discussed on this show before.
Great. Yeah. So my upcoming game is called Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder. You can find it over on Steam right now if you are into PC gaming. It's a Metroidvania about a very cool redhead blasting robots through a world that's kind of fallen apart. And it's just a labor of love. I'm producing it, but the dev team has been killing it as of late. And we've got a few fun things we're dropping before release. But it has been getting wishlisted like crazy, and I'm just so impressed. It is the first time I've delved out of the world of sort of party game-esque games, and now we're getting into like a what some might consider a quote-unquote real game, which has been a lot of fun to develop. And so I'm very excited to see what people think.
Yeah, I'm excited to play it myself. Now, when does it come out?
On the 16th of July.
So very soon, you guys.
Yes.
So keep that on their radar. If you do have a chance to check it out on Steam, do add it to your wish list. But okay, so this week, this is kind of related to the stuff that you've been working on for this game. A Nintendo executive said that games are taking longer to develop. First of all, how long did this game take to develop?
Years at this point. I didn't come on until it was already under production. So I came on in order to help get it done and finish it. So it'd been in production 2-3 years before I came on. It's a very small dev team.
Okay.
And so
how many people?
This is one
roughly.
Right now, under 5 is what we're at.
Okay.
And so very small dev team. A lot of contract work and people from the outside coming in to do different assets and things. But for the most part, most indie games on the level that I'm at are games that are going to be 2, 3, 4 people. It isn't until something really blows up and becomes big that you're going to get a 20, 30, 100-person dev team. And then scale changes completely. But for the most part, a small team means a long dev process. And most indie devs are people who are doing it after work or on the weekends. And so it takes years and years. Sometimes indie games take 7, 8, 9, 10 years to make. And that's kind of the normal thing for them. Bigger games, obviously, from bigger AAA studios, the length of those games is more about the things they're putting into it. The more graphics and the more levels and the more different designs and things, it requires more people, it requires more money, it requires more time. And the more graphically intense or more intricate games get, the more time you need to include just to work out the significant amount of bugs that are going to be there.
Yeah, and so in your mind, it does make sense that certain games do take longer to make, especially the AAA titles. Do you think there's like advantages of a longer development cycle, disadvantages? Is a shorter cycle better? Should people work towards that?
I don't know, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, that one, because if you have a long dev cycle for a game and you're dumping tons of money in it, we've seen AAA games now that are 500,000, like not 1,000, not even that, 500 million. I don't know what I'm talking. So much. 500,000 is like an indie level at this point. 500 million, and they're so expensive. And you can imagine that those games you would spend all this time and energy and QA on, that you would have a polished title at the end. Because they're so big and they're so expansive, there's no way you're catching every bug. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can have a great game come out and nail it, or you can spend a lot of money and get a dud. And if that happens, then you're thinking to yourself, well, why the hell why do we do that? Mm-hmm. So it's potentially one of those things where, yes, we'll see less games come out over time, but of those games, I think less chances will be taken because they're afraid the amount of money and the amount of time it takes to produce that the games we're going to get are going to slowly all amalgamate into like one kind of, oh, well, it's safe. We know what we're getting.
And I have seen, teams, small teams of one sometimes have more successful games than AAA titles have been. Stardew Valley, Among Us, these types of games. It's such a tiny team to have such success. So yeah, it is really tough when you're thinking, oh, I'm going to spend, like you said, 500 million on a game. Like, is this going to be different? Is this going to actually get as many players as we're expecting to make back our money and then some? So yeah, I feel like it's a tough time. I feel like right now, we saw a lot of layoffs and stuff like that. I feel like games and heads of these studios are looking at ways to refine their processes to make it a little bit cheaper and hopefully quicker to make games. Or maybe just spread it out. Ubisoft has said now they're going to make Assassin's Creed games, but have more time in between them. Like every year a new Call of Duty, every year a new Assassin's Creed game is not a proven thing anymore. It doesn't work as maybe it used to back in the day. So I think they're re-examining. But what has your experience been like working on a game on that back end? You said it's your first time producing in this capacity. How did you get involved? And also, what has it been like for you?
Sure. The very first game I ever produced was called Monster Prom. And since then, it's gone on there's been 2 sequels. There's another one coming. And that's been an incredible experience because that was a game that was basically me saying, how do I help get this thing made? Right? At the end of the day, it was a game that I loved. And I was like, how do I get this out there? And I reached out to them and was like, how can I help? And they were like, money. And I was like, gotcha. Let's do this thing. And from there, it was sort of a process of learning how games are made in the industry. Because as a video game player, you don't really understand everything that goes into a game and how much on the back end there actually is. Because you aren't just developing art assets or writing a story or piecing together the process of how you have to think about like a core gameplay loop, what a gamer would do. And then at the end of the day, you have to think about what is the normal person going to do when they play your game. So when you sit down to play a game, you have to think about, okay, Naomi as a player, what would you do when you played a game? If you're doing a point and click or you're doing a Souls-like game, what is the thing you would do? Would you go right? Would you go left? Would you go back? Most people, when they play a side-scrolling game, would go to the right because it's always to the right. Some people who play a lot of games, they always check left. What's over on the left side right away? And so you have to get in that mindset of when we create our game, what kind of things are we going to add for people who are thinking that way? You have to think about every gamer. And then you have to think, okay, well, we can't cater to everyone. So who are we catering to? And then you have to think of those people, what kind of experience do you want to give them? And then from that point on, you have to think about, all right, is this a multi-ending game? Is this a game with what kind of options are we going to give? There's so many levels to it. And it can be often overwhelming, but that's why you have to narrow it down and fine tune to the point where you almost feel like you're fine tuning it too much.
Right.
And then you're like, okay, now we have our game.
Yeah. And I guess with that comes a lot of challenges because once you release a game, again, you might have missed something or something along those lines. What are some of the challenges that you think were the hardest for you that you didn't expect?
No matter what, you're going to find bugs and you just have to kind of accept that you will. And not take it personally when someone calls you out and like, yo, I found this bug. I can't believe you guys let this through. And it's like, got us. We can't believe we let it through either. Guys, we fixed it. We're going to fix it. Don't worry. And it definitely happens. And it's one of those things you learn from and you try to look out for in the future. But again, the more complicated a game, the more bugs they're going to be. For every time that you have a choice in a game of right or left or to say yes or no, or to I'm going to date this character or not date this character, that's another path that's opened up. And eventually, there's so many pathways in a game and so many branches that you're bound to find some sort of bug in there, one that you probably missed as a developer. And so you just have to accept that it's going to be a thing and you have to deal with it and someone might find it before you do. But that's why you test and you do Q&A. And I think that's also why bigger games, AAA titles, want more time because there's going to be a lot more of that because there's so much more in those games.
Yeah, they're just so big that any chance of there being a bug is multiplied by 2 million.
Yeah.
Well, I guess this covers the dev discussion that I wanted to talk about. What have you been playing personally that you've been loving? I know your game's coming out soon, and we will be talking a bit more about that. But what is something that you've been playing that you've been loving lately?
Oh, well, I mean, right now I am playing 3 games in a way that I would say is too much. Obviously, I'm a big Final Fantasy nerd, so I'm playing Final Fantasy 14 right now. The new DLC, or expansion, I guess, dropped Dawn Trail. Big fan of that. I've been going back into Elden Ring, and I have made a terrible mistake of deciding to start over
Oh.
And I forgot what the beginning of that game is like. It is very punishing. I was used to my sort of end game build, just run around zapping dudes.
Much easier once you build it up.
Yeah, much easier. Not the case when you start over. I'm like, right. I forgot.
Yeah.
I got to learn mechanics again.
Yeah.
And then I've also been playing a game called, boy, I hope I said this correctly, Dystopica? Dystopica? I assume it's Dystopica.
Mm-hmm.
It is so simple and so easy. There's really no act. I'm not sure what you would call this game. It's like a chill out game where you build a cyberpunk-esque sort of Blade Runner city, and that's it. You just straight up build there's mood music in the background. You can change the lighting, rain effects, but you just slowly build this city. And it isn't like SimCity where you have to manage stuff. You just are making the city. That's it. That's the whole game. It's 9 p.m. on a Monday and you're just tired game. You're like, I'm going to listen to some cool synth tunes while I build this neat city. And I love stuff like that. The older I get, the more I start appreciating games like that, or games like Simpler Times where you just
cozy games,
box stuff up. Yeah. Great stuff.
Great stuff. Before we leave here, I want people to know where they can find your content, where they can watch what you're doing.
Once again, Gestalt Steam and Cinder is going to be on Steam on the 16th of July. Please go wishlist it today. We're very proud that a lot of people are into the game. Very excited. But thankfully for all of you trying to find all my stuff, I do way too much. From YouTube to streams to podcasts to all sorts of things. I put it all over on jessecox.com. That's Jesse with no I, no Y, just JESSECOX. It's all there.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you'll come back on my show sometime.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Jesse Cox is a content creator and video game producer. You can follow him on Twitter at Jesse Cox.
Flawless victory! Continue!
And that's This Week in Gaming. I'm your host, Naomi Kyle. I had such a blast this week bringing you all the news. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks to my co-writer, Josh Seaman, for helping me put the show together every week. Don't forget to let me know what you're playing and what you think of these stories by tagging me at Naomi Kyle on social. From all of us here at This Week in Gaming, we wish you a gaming-filled week. We'll see you same time, same place next week. Talk to you later.
This Week in Gaming is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more podcasts just like these.